Thanks so much for coming, everyone, tonight. My name is Jim Klein. I'm one of the at-large members of the Corpus Christi City Council. The meeting tonight is seeking public input into the way that the city is going to disperse the money that it receives from the Housing and Urban Development Department from the federal government. We receive just under $5 million a year, thereabouts, every year from HUD. And so we're trying to decide how to spend that money. And so this meeting is one of 5 meetings. This is for the District 4. But you can attend any one of these. You don't have to live in the district necessarily. There's one more tomorrow night yet, Thursday night yet as well, at 6 p.m. That's going to be, help me out, at the Garcia Library, thank you, over on Brockhampton Road, 5930, thereabouts, Brockhampton, Clotilda Garcia Public Library. So another one of these tomorrow night if you want. And again, you can weigh in, submit public comments to the city website as well. I guess they send them to... I'm sorry.
Yes, we'll have LeticiaK@tctexas.com, and we'll also have the emails at the end of the presentation.
Okay, yeah, very good, very good. So I'm just here to kind of kick things off, and so I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer Buxton to kind of talk about this, pose some questions to folks, and then try to seek input from the public. Really, this is an opportunity for you, the public, now, either in the room here or, as I said, through Facebook as well, to provide some input to us about how you want that money spent. Money's coming into the city now from the federal government, and we have to decide how to go about dispersing those funds, and this is a chance for you folks to kind of weigh in on that.
Thank you much, very much appreciate it. Actually, tonight, Leticia Canmore is going to do our presentation and lead our conversations. Leticia Canmore is our grant monitoring program manager, and also with us is Dan McGinn. He's the Director of Planning and Community Development. So this is Leticia Canmore, and she's going to lead us through today's presentation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Again, I'm Leticia Canmore, and we have a short PowerPoint presentation to show you. Just like Councilman Klein mentioned, we're going to be talking about the fiscal year 2025, program year 2024, and receiving input on how the community feels we should spend those funds. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. And as you come in, please, if you would, sign in. And if not, signing in on the way out is fine. So what's the agenda for tonight? We're going to do a quick overview of the annual action plan planning process. We're going to discuss the priorities for this year. We're also going to discuss the use of funds, and we're going to go into a little detail about each one of the grants. We receive allocations for the Community Development Block Grant, the Emergency Solutions Grant, and also the Home Partnerships Program Grant. So that being said, we're going to do input on the action plan and where those funds would go into community development, housing, and homeless needs of the community. Going on to the next slide. Okay, so the consolidated planning process. So part of receiving the funds, we have a requirement to HUD to put together a 5-year consolidated plan to set priorities, goals, and objectives for the use of the federal funds. The city's current plan is fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2027. See a lot of familiar faces in here. We did the input sessions last year, put those together in a plan, and those were approved by City Council. And then also it included the first year of the annual action plan, and that's the current year and the projects that we're rolling out currently. For this year, we're going to prepare an action plan on the proposed funding we're going to receive and how we intend to use those allocations. So this plan will be the second year of the 5-year plan. Moving on to the next slide. So what are the priorities that were established? As we can tell here, there was 6 categories. The first one being increase and maintain affordable housing. What are some of those examples? Housing repair and rehabilitation, home buyer programs, tenant-based rental assistance, good afternoon, and creating affordable rental housing. Public facilities, just some examples. The library is an example, parks, youth centers, senior centers, accessibility improvements, and curb sidewalk improvements. The next category is blight removal, and that would be your typical code enforcement. And then addressing homelessness, supporting the homeless efforts and initiatives, emergency shelter operations support. We have creation and maintenance of affordable rental housing and rapid rehousing. And then for public services, those are items such as homeless supportive services, senior services, and job training. And then there's always a component there for administration and planning. Going on to the next slide, well, what does that look like? Okay, so based on the input that we received today, we're gonna go back and we're gonna put together a plan. And then the next step to that, we're gonna release the notice of funding availability. That's gonna be released on April the 1st, 2024. That public notice was already posted. We are also gonna have technical assistant workshops on April the 4th, 2024, and those locations are already posted on our websites and also on Caller Times. And then we're gonna put the draft plan out for public comment in June of 2024, presenting to council in July 2024, and then submitting to HUD in August 2024. And this is the typical cycle for us. Of course. We want to take you on mic, Judy, so make sure we hear you. We are on Facebook Live and other platforms, so you just want to speak loudly.
Is it on? Okay. You gave a nice timeline, but when would the money, if it's awarded, actually become available and ready to start projects?
Sure. So once we submit to HUD in August, about mid-August, they have about 45 days to review the plan, and we have all other documentation we have to submit. So typically that happens by the end of September, ideally, ready to go for October the 1st. Now, depending what is happening with the federal offices at that time, of course, that may vary slightly. I think this year we had a late rollout. Yeah, November. Does that answer your question? Yes, please. All righty, ma'am. Okay, so we have not received our allocations for this year. We don't know the amount. However, we're basing what we think we're going to receive. Usually there's just a small increase or slight decrease in some of the funding. So we're going based on what we received last year. For CDBG, we received $2.6 million. For home, we received $1.3 million. And for ESG, $235,000. And just to be clear, these allocations are based on formulas that are outside of our control. They're based on Congress, depending on population and other data sources such as the census. Okay. All right, we're going to go into each one of the grants, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what those eligible activities look like. For CDBG, some of the items that qualify as your housing rehabilitation, that's like your minor home repair, homeowner assistance, public facilities. Some of these things you'll start seeing that kind of mirror the priorities that were established in the 5 years. Blight removal, code enforcement, economic development, acquisition and disposition of real property, and then also public services. So these are your eligible activities. Not only are those eligible, but also for CDBG specifically, we do have to meet one of 3 national objectives. The first one being the program has to benefit low to moderate income persons. Those can be on an individual basis or area-wide, just depending where you're located. For example, an individual would be minor home repair. Area-wide would be like a park that's located in CDBG census tract. Second national objective is prevention or elimination of blight, and then the third being urgent need. Urgent need is not really utilized. It's kind of like an emergency. There's a hurricane now. In the development of a plan, we can't anticipate if that's going to happen. So typically, we do not have any projects for urgent need. Those also require pre-approval by HUD, by the way. Okay, so what does that look like for the city of Corpus Christi? This is a partial map concentrating where the majority of the census tracts are, CDBG census tracts are located. And you can see here, there's a little bit of mix and match kind of concentrated in this area right here. Everybody have a good look at that? Okay. All right. Okay, so what priority projects would you like to see with CDBG funds? You know, we have the categories here: increasing and maintaining affordable housing, public facilities, blight removal, addressing homelessness, public services, admin and planning. Please feel free to share your ideas, input, what you think would be a good project, and maybe where. Would anybody like to make a comment on this for CDBG funds?
I'm really big on saying projects throughout all the neighborhoods. I'm sorry. I'd really like to see projects throughout the neighborhood spreading out. I know that most of our HUD homes are located in certain couple different districts. And that centralized need of services really focuses all of our emergency services, everything, all our social services in one area. If we had the ability of building out our HUD housing away from those areas, those blighted areas, and moving them throughout the city, we're giving everybody then a chance to have all the services that we have throughout our city. And that means education, as long as with just the growth of the human beings that are not subjected to just this concentration of homelessness and lack of income. Again, it's a straight message that we simply should just migrate some of this housing throughout all the neighborhoods.
Okay. So what would the location be? You're talking about affordable housing?
Well, affordable housing, absolutely, but any housing. I can tell you other cities that have done it, and with fantastic results. The largest, well, St. Louis started it, Chicago followed it up, and they broke down all of their HUD housing projects. And instead of just displacing them into a void of nothing, they developed very small footprint housing. So you can use small homes, you can use small print townhomes in any new developments coming up, or designating an area that the city just decides to put any kind of homes. We need more homes, obviously. We're lacking the housing. It's just one way. If we're going to add housing to this topic, we probably shouldn't concentrate on any one area.
Okay, so affordable housing citywide. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Are we supposed to introduce ourselves? Because he didn't.
You may if you'd like, Judy.
I'm David Hall, and I'm the founder of an organization that works on exactly that, subsidized housing in economic areas.
Perfect. We'd love to have your information.
We will add him.
Okay.
My name is Judy Telge, and just looking at the priority projects listed, and I have prepared remarks, but I didn't see that as I did them, so I'll just hand them to y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
The first bullet, increase and maintain affordable housing, is basically the same as increase and preserve affordable housing. That's getting to be a bigger issue with some of the tax credit properties ending their period of affordability. And we do need to make sure that that's part of our plan that I'm sure is in the works and I can't find it there. But at any rate, housing repair and rehab is important for preservation, especially of affordable housing. Tenant-based rental assistance, I worked hard to get that on there and hope it stays. And to create affordable rental housing is absolutely essential because there's just not enough of it. And add the word accessible, create affordable, accessible rental housing, particularly for people at lowest income. And we know what that is. That's 30% area median income and lower,
Okay.
down to no income. And that means we can slide down to the section on addressing homelessness. And instead of just supporting homeless efforts, let's make a commitment to end homelessness in this community. Other communities have done it. Well, there are 4 communities in Texas we've identified and started an interviewing process to find out where are you in that continuum. How did you get started? What are you doing to make that happen? And we're going to be, we are working on, and my colleague sitting over here, Bruce, is probably going to say something also. We're working very diligently to make ending homelessness what we need to be doing. So in addressing homelessness, I think every one of those are worthy of attention, and making sure that homelessness is connected to housing. I think having the department, I believe it's still considered housing and homelessness, or homelessness and housing, whatever, however it's termed. That's good that the city had the foresight to put those two together, because they are necessary. You won't have homelessness if you have enough housing. Blight removal, yes, that does need to maintain a priority. And public service under that is homeless supportive services, but I would put that up with the housing and services, because the case management and wraparound services are necessary to not just get people into housing, but keep them there. So thank you for showing that. That helps with the thought process. And housing, 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 especially for lowest income. We will see data that supports that. I also want to see us get that plan, that affordable housing plan, off wherever it's sitting, and get a task force put together. Council people can say, we're going to initiate a task force. The mayor can. And you've got many people who are very willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved with that. There's 3 of us sitting here right now. And I think we'll see some actual progress being made in our housing and homelessness eradication ending this year, and I think that's what we ought to aim for. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. So what I'm hearing is creating affordable, accessible rental housing, hitting all of the categories here, which, by the way, community input from last year was actually established a priority. So thank you for the feedback.
Yes, that really is good. And I failed to mention where every single district needs to do something in affordable housing. Why? Because we want to hold our council representatives accountable. And that doesn't mean it leaves at large off the hook, Jim. You've got to go around to all of them.
Thank you. And then blight removal, addressing homelessness, also tying it to supportive services, and then public services, expanding the homeless supportive services as well to the housing, and then affordable housing in every district, and then, of course, your admin and planning. Bruce, did you have some comments?
I did, and maybe some questions.
Sure.
Use the microphone, okay. So, like for David, are you talking about like mixed income housing opportunities? Like,
It runs the gambit across the board, depending on the physical locations. All right. Thank you. Depending on the different locations, we obviously have many tools at our disposal to do it. I see that there's in other cities, it's a very promising program where they're using small footprint housing. Let's say townhomes, that are 3 townhomes that are just in a row, and they can take up a lot anywhere in the city. And yes, we can build those. Even funding can be projected to an idea of using investors. If investors are running the properties because they have that investment and they're running them under the HUD guidelines, we now have quality control, and then we're building out housing. There's also the tax breaks are already there, but when it comes to rental units, and I see this everywhere, and it might be here, and I might be talking, maybe I'm wrong, but when you build apartment buildings, which I've done in many states, I find that there's restrictions, or I shouldn't say restrictions, but there's these advantages that you build out 10%, or you fill in 10% of your rental units as subsidized housing. And again, I don't know if we do that here.
So you're talking about low-income housing tax credit projects?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
and we do fund them. We
Well,
provide
when
home funding.
the mandated 10% of all, when we have a lot of apartment buildings being built, if 10% of those are reserved for low-income housing, that really should be a projection.
Okay, did you want to comment to that, Jennifer?
We don't, I don't think in Texas you can do that. Although
Is there?
there are some states that allows for that.
Right.
We unfortunately cannot.
I understand. Okay, fair enough.
Thank you. However, David, we would love to hear the projects that you mentioned, the cities, and where you've built successful projects. We'd love to get that information from you. Would love to do some research and look at those business models and, how they were successful. It sounds like private partnerships is what you're requesting as part of the Affordable Housing Initiative. Okay.
It would be one of many, yes.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments?
So, first, just at some point, I want to be able to look back at our 5-year plan, which has most of that on it, and look and see what have we done and where are we and what are we still working on. I looked on the website, and I think we have the previous 5-year plan. I don't see the current one on there, but if somebody could check on that, and then I just want to look at it and see where are we on. And I'm assuming, because I'm still kind of new at figuring this out, that our annual plan is in alignment with our 5-year plan, right?
Correct. And so part of the performance metrics comes out in our consolidated annual performance report. That's done at the end of every year, December the 31st, submitted to HUD. And then they have about 2 months to either approve it or disapprove it. We do put those on our website as well. If you don't see the previous 5-year con plan, you might want to look at the link that says archives, and we'll double check on our side and make sure that if it's not there, that it is there.
I saw
So we
older
should
ones,
have
but I
one.
didn't see the last
One-year
one
one.
that we just did.
Sure,
But look for the report, too.
absolutely.
We're in the middle of a 5-year plan right now, right?
We're on year 2
we
of the new one.
Yeah, we
Yes.
just passed it last year. We did this last year for the
Yes,
5-year
sir.
plan
We sure
and for an
did.
annual plan. So, yeah, I'm going to kind of look at my notes while I'm talking.
Sure.
Judy is on housing, and I'm really focused on homelessness. Well, that's a real marriage because, I mean, I can tell you, like she mentioned, the cities in Texas that are in the process of ending homelessness, and Denton, when we talk to them, I think they're so typical. Their bottleneck is housing. I mean, they have a collaborative. They're identifying everybody who's homeless in their community. They're prioritizing them by vulnerability. And some people, they even have a fund just to help give them $800 to $1,000 to keep them in their home or to get into a home in addition to that. But, I mean, they're ready to go. They're waiting for housing, which is not surprising, right? Because you kind of have to be working really hard on housing now to have it when it's needed. So that's their bottleneck, and I think that's probably typical. What I wanted to say was, and do I need to identify myself?
Sure.
Okay. Bruce Wilson, I'm residing at 6810 Boardwalk Avenue here in Corpus Christi. Providing these comments as the Executive Director of Coastal Bend Community Empowerment, co-advocate of the Homeless Helping Homeless Peer Advocates, member of the Accessible Housing Resources, Board of Directors, convener of Ending Homelessness Together team, and a resident of Corpus Christi. So, and I thank you to the staff. Thanks to the staff and the city council members for coming to our district to listen to our thoughts for these various HUD grants. At last year, I was I live in District 5, and I had an opportunity to come tonight to this one, and I remember last year in District 5. You probably remember, everybody wanted to talk about homelessness. It was amazing, really, and encouraging, because it wasn't like, oh, what are you going to do about those damn homeless people? It was like, what can we do for
Right.
our homeless community?
I remember.
So remember that? It was
Yes, sir.
it was really pretty astonishing, and I was pleased. So I just was remembering we discussed homelessness as a housing issue. Homelessness is so many issues. It's a health issue. Homelessness is a health issue. Homelessness is a housing issue. Homelessness is a trauma issue. It's an economic issue, which I want to talk more about. It's a social issue. It's a lot of different issues because it's complex. But first and foremost, it's a housing issue. If you don't have housing, you're going to have homelessness, right? There is no other place to go. Whatever other traumas or mental health issues you got, if you don't have housing, you have homelessness. Lack of affordable housing is a key issue. Without sufficient affordable housing, especially for the lowest income, who we're trying to get off the streets and help them move up, all attempts to mitigate against homelessness just keep coming back to the street. So housing. To echo Judy, we are successfully housing some individuals in Corpus Christi. We're not starting at zero. We have a number of organizations, agencies in Corpus Christi that are getting people into housing, but it's like a trickle compared to what we have to do to have more people exiting homelessness than we have entering homelessness, right? So we're not starting at zero, but the scale and the scope has to be a lot more than what we're doing, and building the housing now is going to be important. So today, the input that the people that I'm working with want to offer to you is that ending homelessness is possible, and Judy just mentioned that, and some of you I think know that, particularly through the HUD blueprint for doing that that THN works with, and so it's possible. And it's happening across the country, and it's happening in 4 cities in Texas. And you mentioned Denton, Lubbock, Beaumont, Abilene. Abilene's the one who's ended veterans homelessness and chronic homelessness, and they're working on hidden homelessness. Denton is the one who said, yeah, we're ready to go, except we don't have the housing. So we'll be talking to Beaumont and Abilene and asking them questions that we're learning how to ask. We're still trying to learn the right questions to ask. Homeless, okay, so the blueprint from HUD, Texas Homeless Network, many other agencies in alignment with this approach, which is adaptable and scalable for every town, city, continuum of care, and local community. And then I mentioned the 4 communities I just told you about, and talking to Denton. And it was Texas Homeless Network, by the way, who said, talk to these 4, because they're similar, and you could become allies. You could learn to support each other in ending homelessness. So we'll keep you informed as much as, if you want to know when we're meeting with the other cities or communities, we can invite you to those. That would be great. Okay, so the input we have to offer you is that ending homelessness is possible. It's happening, right? And also, that we don't want to offer that ending homelessness, this is a new shift for us, but ending homelessness is an economic benefit. It costs more to take care of people on the street, maintaining homelessness, than it does to put them in an apartment with a case manager. That's, I mean, we're going to have to crunch our own numbers here in Corpus Christi, and we're talking about how to do that, but nationally, all the literature says, yeah, this is an economic issue. We save money by putting people into housing with case management. So our input is that ending homelessness is an economic benefit. It's for most, I think everyone in the room, it's a moral issue. It's a humanitarian issue. But I think it's important when we're talking to the city of Corpus Christi and council members and administrators who are trying to have this fiduciary trust with the funds, the taxes that come from the citizens, to zoom in on an economic benefit. So besides being besides having a big heart and caring, it is important to know that we can, that this is an economic issue, and that we can actually improve our economy by getting people into permanent supportive housing, which brings grants into the community. It raises up tenants who can earn income. It improves tourism, the downtown business district. It's just a significant economic development opportunity. So when we're looking at economic development opportunities, I would say instead of us trying to sell this as ending homelessness, let's say here is an economic development opportunity right here.
So can you name some examples of what you're thinking about, what that would look like? So we know housing's a component, it's important.
Oh,
We know
sure.
supportive services is important. And we know that ending homelessness is important.
Right.
So can you give us an example of kind of where your thoughts?
You mean like
for
what systems have to?
Economic development
Oh, economic
project.
development. I will get back to you on that because we're just now realizing that that this is how it works in other communities that are ending homelessness. So I do think either we need to identify a consultant who's third-party neutral person who can crunch our own numbers, or we may be able to discover in the literature that's out there, or through artificial intelligence, which my friend Dave is also expert at, we can maybe identify at least what's the cost of homelessness per individual, and what is the cost of putting people into housing. And there's a multitude of factors that you're having to weigh in on that. But if we can, either through a consultant or artificial intelligence or just the literature that's out there, at least identify what does it cost per person. Otherwise, we've got to go ahead and count every homeless person right now. I mean, you can't do those counts until you have that data, right? So I haven't figured out on the chicken and the egg really which one's going to have to come first. The system for ending homelessness, or systems, include a collaboration of agencies, organizations, providers, city,
Private partners.
private and public partners at such a scale and a scope that you can actually end homelessness. We have some great work that's being done at small scale and small scope, and some that Amanda's doing with a lot of our case managers.
Okay.
But to pull together a partnership, a collaborative that can actually end homelessness, that requires interagency collaboration, at least, probably community-wide collaboration, right? And we need citizens getting on board to that. So we're just now figuring out the economic development piece, and where to start in calculating that.
Sure.
So, but we'll stay in touch with you on that.
Okay, sure. Of course, you sure may. That's why we're here.
Development, I think, rather than homelessness comes with so many facets, and it's so different than the typical way to approach things, especially when it comes to people that like to count beans, and that's what they do well. Homelessness causes cost right now, with people being on the streets, people overutilizing health care, using the most expensive parts of health care, the emergency room, involving justice system unnecessarily. There are costs associated with homelessness that the communities bear. So a way to look at economic development, or redevelopment, if you will, is going to be, instead of the money going into what it's going into now, and looks like it's going to continue going, if we're just going to address homelessness, then that's the place to start with figuring out economic development or redevelopment for the community. How do you do that? I don't know, other than we find out what are the costs associated with a person being homeless, a day in the life of, run up the costs, and then multiply that. That could give us some kind of an idea of, okay, we're spending this much money, now let's do a big shift. instead of putting money into this, let's decrease that money and put it into this. And it's housing. I mean, if everything would shift into housing, we'd have a good start at getting money to leverage other money to be able to do something. And I think we need to also say there are things that are happening already in Corpus Christi that are good things. And we figured out we're not starting new things. We're just looking at the way things are working and what there is here. Like, for example, HIP. We're looking at how can we make HIP better. And HIP wants to be better.
Homeless
So-
Issues Partnership.
Yes,
And
so
just
let's
people listen.
work with that. Let's not look at starting another HIP, if you will, or starting another process that they've got involved with, which is HUD back, the utilizing the HMS. I mean, some of us were looking at doing a different. Well, let's all use that HMIS. Let's ask the city to pay for the licensure for $300 for each organization to do that. So we want to utilize what we have, what's working, and what fits into that when it comes to HUD money, I think is what we ought to be doing. And I do have to say, I would love to get a small property for people with disabilities who are at 30% area median income and with disabilities, have a small property. It's HUD funded, 811, and it's good for 5 people right now. I want to get 2 more people. So that's only 2 people. And it's, Judy, it's only 2. Well, I only want 100, maybe up to $200,000 to renovate, to be able to make 2 more apartment capacity available. So that's utilizing something we already have that's good, going in that direction. Let's increase it and use some home funds to do that. We have other examples of things like that, bringing Come Dream, Come Build into this area. They've got projects started, hopefully with the city. They've got one in Brooks County and one in Kingsville. So they're coming into the Coastal Bend area. That's a group that is a nonprofit affordable housing developer that we haven't had in the past to be able to do local services. So we're doing some bring what is working here or can work here.
Sure. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, I'll just pick up. So my ask for this annual plan is to maximize the funds possible from HUD for affordable housing, especially for the lowest income people who need housing, and for case management, because without case management, they're not going to stay in housing. I mean, I've worked with people who are transitioning into housing, and it's gruesome without
Supportive
community,
services.
without support services, right? So maximizing the funding to support also nonprofits like Judy referred to, like CDCB, Come Dream, Come Build, because people who are building for profit, they can't build the affordable housing that we're talking about for the lowest income people. It's just going to take a nonprofit developer to do that. So CDCB or whoever else, it's a nonprofit and and they have some funds that they bring with them, and they can build really, really low income housing. So I close off by saying I get it. I understand why that these are huge commitments that have to just come from the heart or from the maybe even from the leadership of the city. It's a big ask to say, can we agree to commit to ending homelessness? Can we agree this year to commit to ending homelessness? That's a huge ask. And even bigger is, can we agree to commit to working together with everyone? And the city can't dictate that. You can, if the city started the ball on that, it would just be enticing and seducing, or drawing other providers to come join you. It's like, we're going to take the lead. We're going to end homelessness, and we need you to do it. That's a big ask, to say commit to ending homelessness and commit to doing it together. But so I was talking to Daniel Gallegos today, and I don't know if I told Judy, but there's different ways to build the kind of collaboration that we're talking about, and one of them is, and I have no idea if this is possible or not, but Daniel was telling me when he was in charge of the continuum of care here in Corpus Christi. Did you know when he was working in neighborhood services, he was in charge of the continuum of care? And so when it got handed over to our homeless issues partnership, they couldn't continue to support that. They just don't have paid staff. They don't have what they need to support that. So, but the funding comes through HUD to administrate the continuum of care. So I don't know if it's possible or not, but I'd like for us to maybe keep talking about that, because the continuum of care could organize the coalition, the collaborative coalition, and then we get more funds coming directly to Corpus Christi from Housing and Urban Development instead of coming through Texas Homeless Network, and they get distributed to wherever else they get distributed to. So there may be more disadvantages than advantages, but I'd like to know what the pros and cons are of reclaiming our continuum of care and getting that administrated from the city hall, because if it could stay in the city hall, then you have institutional memory and you have stability and sustainability and all those things that I think is going to be important.
Okay.
So anyway, those are big asks, and for the funding, it's affordable housing and case management.
Perfect. So it's a perfect gateway to the next grant fund that we're going to talk about for Home Issues Partnership, but I think there's another individual behind you. So housing specific to 30% or below, supportive services, talking about COC funding, potential opportunities. Like to continue that conversation, maybe offline. You have our information. You can write us, email us. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, so my name is Isabel Jones, and I am with Circles of the Coastal Bend. It's an initiative to lower the poverty levels here in our city. And one of the things, I'm going to echo what he was saying, of course, into housing. I think housing is one of the things that will help us the most. But not just any housing. I do think that whenever we think about housing and building affordable housing, sometimes the houses that are being built, they're not quality. And we want to make sure that not just because someone is experiencing poverty, we want to put them in a house that may not be the best quality home, because at the end of the day, they're stuck with this mortgage for 20, 30 years, and then they have no equity because the house is breaking down. So sometimes whenever we have this type of homes, we notice that happens. Okay. Same thing with affordable apartments, that they're just, we want to make sure that just because they are using housing, that doesn't mean that they don't have to have quality of life. So I think it's very important that whenever we develop any apartments or housing, that the materials and the building requirements are high standards, just like we have it in other places. Because one of the things that I noticed is that in the poor areas of town, for the lack of better word, the housing that is being built is not the greatest. So we see that 5 years down the road is already looking like a 50-year-old home, because the houses that are being built are not being built to the best standards. Another thing that I would want to recommend, and I don't know if it's possible through the grant, but we do also see what we call in our program the cliff effect. What that means is that, let's say someone is in housing and they are the best employee that you have ever had, and you said, you know what, you are wonderful, so I would like to give you a raise. That's a great thing. So the person gets a $300 raise. Well, now that disqualify them for qualifying for housing because they had a $300 raise. So now they're having to get an apartment that maybe is $1,000. So the benefit that they got it doesn't equal to the benefits that they're losing. So I wonder if there's some way that we can allocate some funds to allow people that are bettering themselves by getting raises, by getting better jobs, and allow them to stay on their housing for a little bit longer so that they can save a cushion, so that they can go into regular housing or buying their own home, but they don't get a chance to do that because we automatically it's too soon. As soon as their income increases, they have to move out. So they don't build any type of reserves. And now they're out on their own. So sometimes we feel that the people are in a cycle of receiving benefits because pushing through the benefits is such a hard task to do on their own that they just stay on the same. And we want to encourage people to be independent. Someone mentioned that the fact that people stay in poverty costs us money. So we want for people to be able to be self-sufficient. But if we as a community don't help them, and I don't say it's a hand down, it's a hand up. You know, like if us as a community say, hey, let me use these funds to help them to build a little bit of a cushion. Another thing that you had asked was in economic development. And I do think that maybe there's a way. I know that downtown we were helping small businesses to move in by giving them some type of funds for them to remodel their buildings, to do things to their facilities so that they could make it better. If we can apply that like on the west side of Corpus, like Molina, in those other areas, in Mary Street, and all those neighborhoods that need a little bit more of a growth, because if we bring more small business or big business to those areas, then obviously we're going to have more people employed. Because the other problem that we have is transportation. So many people can get a job because their transportation, again, you know, is not the greatest. So if someone works here in Flor Blanc, for example, and they live in Corpus, oh, good luck with that. You all know that this is going to take them 2 hours to get to and from. And if they have a child like me, then they have to go pick them up from school and take him home. It's almost impossible for this person to get ahead. So then we have to bring employment to those neighborhoods by giving some type of credit to those people wanting to bring the small business. Even city, I think city offices. Why don't we have city offices in those neighborhoods? Bring all these other government agencies to these neighborhoods, because if you're working there, you're going to eat there. You're going to bring other economic development to that area. So I feel like as a city, we can bring more business into that area, and that would be part of economic development. I also think that parks and recreation is so important, and I'll be done with this, because I do think that, again, going back, I guess, because I'm a parent, and that's something that we're struggling with our neighborhood. We don't have a park, but thank God I have a car. So I can take my child to another park, but there's people that don't have a car. So by the time we build these parks and we better these recreation centers, these children will be already seniors in high school. It would be too late for them. For that generation, it would be too late. So I think if we can focus on getting the parks, the recreation centers in those neighborhoods that need it the most, where people don't have transportation, and that they can walk to these places, and allow them maybe to buy ice cream at that location or something like that. That would be better. And I know that there's some allocation or something that was proposed to the Garza, there you go. And I seen the proposal, but it hasn't gone into effect. And by the time this goes into effect, these kids are going to be 20 years old.
Thank you for your feedback. So I'm hearing quality affordable housing, possibly some kind of gap rental assistance program, something to that degree, and the same for bringing folks, having some kind, incentivize folks to open a business somewhere near services. Okay.
And without giving your specific address, where do you live that you don't have a park?
So it is crazy that I don't have a park because of my address. It's 4201 Lake Geneva.
Do you know where that is?
It's in the Ranch Lake subdivision, and we don't have a park. There was a park, and it was removed, and nothing.
Okay. Yeah. There's not a parcel in town that Dan doesn't know. That's why I'm looking over. But okay, I was just curious.
Oh, I'll be more than happy to give you more details on that, because we really would love to have a park there.
Appreciate it.
And then the last item being parks, investing in parks. So that being said, if we don't have any more questions on this, we can move on to the next grant.
Hi, my name is Berger.
Hi.
And I was just wondering, with the low-income housing, what would be the plan to keep that low-income housing affordable? Because while prices go up, wages have not been going up. So what would be the plan to keep it affordable?
Sure, I'm going to pass this to Ms. Jennifer Buxton.
Sure. So with all of this money, it comes from the feds, right? The feds put all sorts of restrictions on it. If we are involved in building any sort of affordable housing, we have to put on what's called an affordability period. As part of that, there are either loan terms or a recapture or a resale provision. So a low-income housing rental complex, if it's new construction, it's required to be maintained as affordable for over 20 years. To monitor that, the city staff goes out, they look at tenant records, they test rent. There's desktop monitoring, there's on-site monitoring, the units are looked at, but tenant income qualifications are looked at, and the rent calculations. And that's done annually every year for 20 years. If there are other funding sources involved in it, like the low-income housing tax credit, that affordability period is extended to usually to 40 years. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just had one more thing. And then with the addressing homelessness, with potential shelters, would they be low barrier, open entry shelters? Because a lot of the shelters in town have ridiculous standards of entry for these houseless people that most of them just cannot meet, and it just puts them back out on the street. What would be the plan with that?
So at this point, we only have, we have a limited capacity as far as provision of a low barrier doesn't exist at this time. We do fund those agencies that provide emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, homeless prevention. All these are the components that funding under ESG, again, has those restrictions. As far as what the plan is, I mean, that's part of us receiving the input here, what it would look like for you as a community and where. A lot of the feedback we also get is folks say, not in my backyard. So we'd like to hear from you what you think that would look like and where.
I think anywhere except in the industrial district where it seems to be where a lot of things are being put nowadays. Somewhere that it is accessible to a lot of the city. While maybe being more than one shelter would be the best thing, if it does end up being just one, somewhere where it is accessible via public transport, so that people without cars could get to and from it, and somewhere where it's not tucked away and hidden out of sight. It's not something that people should be ashamed of seeing.
Okay, and then maybe probably located near services, is that what we're hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. You have more input over here?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chloe, and I actually live in District 2, but this was the only session that I could make tonight, so thank you for welcoming here to Flower Bluff. And I'm really encouraged by everyone's compassion and seriousness in solving, what really is a heartbreaking crisis. And yeah, to Berger's point, I mean, and to your point, of the folks who are who don't want to see a low barrier shelter in their backyard. I mean, I think something that the city can pursue is like working with organizations who work directly with houseless folks, right? I mean, we fear what we don't know. There's a lot of ignorance around folks who are houseless, right? And I really think canvassing efforts are incredibly important. When you put any kind of project in people's vicinity, they're gonna have questions. And I mean, those questions should be addressed, taken seriously, but at the end of the day, it's exposure to other people, right, who are different than us, and, facilitated dialogue that actually get people to change their mind. And then when you talk about these projects, I mean, the perspective that, Bruce is offering, that Judy is offering, and the fact that this is an economic development opportunity, this is also a crime prevention opportunity. A lot of houseless folks commit crimes of survival, right? So they're stealing resources that they need to live to the next month. And yeah, we can debate whether or not that kind of behavior should be criminalized at all. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that it happens, and that when folks have resources, the likelihood of them committing these kinds of crimes go way down. So I mean, we also have to think about, putting this into perspective. This isn't something that is happening to a neighborhood. This is something that is benefiting the neighborhood, and we want community members to be a part of that, right? But the city is going to have to do its due diligence, and I'm sure organizations are willing to help them in these kind of canvassing efforts or town halls or forums. So I think that's, you know, really the recipe for success.
Okay, so it sounds like low barrier shelter. Okay. All righty. We're going to jump right into the home investment partnerships here and what that looks like in terms of eligible activities. We have housing rehabilitation. We've heard a little bit about preservation of homes. That's eligible. Homeowner assistance, new construction, affordable housing, looking at whether it be single family or multifamily. And then, of course, tenant-based rental assistance, which Judy is very familiar with that. And so based on the home fund itself, which is strictly for housing, what priority projects would you like to see with the home funds? Now, again, these are the three categories. We talked about housing repair and rehab, home buyer, TIBRA, creating a rental, affordable rental housing, and then, of course, in terms of addressing homelessness, which that has been echoed around the room all evening, is the creation and maintenance of affordable rental housing, new construction, and rehabilitation. Does anyone want to add anything that we have not already talked about, or give somebody else an opportunity that hasn't yet spoken this chance?
Thank you. Words are important.
Okay.
Renovation, is that possible with home funds? We talked about this, but
The home program does not use the. I'm sorry, the home program does not use the phrase renovation. It's repair and rehabilitation, if you're speaking in the vernacular of the program.
okay, so taking the word renovation, it would, in this terminology, be rehabilitation.
Correct. Think renovation means your kitchen got a makeover. Rehabilitation means your plumbing was upgraded to modern standards. Does that make sense?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Renovation means rehabilitation.
Okay.
We don't use the program does not use
Okay.
renovation.
Okay, very good, thank you. I needed to know that because I'll be submitting.
We know what you mean though, Judy.
Yeah, I know you do. But I guess I'll have to use that terminology, rehabilitation, for a project that I'll be submitting and
Yes, ma'am.
have information about that. They both want it.
So,
Okay.
I would love Chloe and Berger, and I'm not sure who else is. Mark and Tuna. Good to meet you. Yeah, right. I got you. So I would love for you to meet Dave and maybe to have more conversation with Dave, because you're talking about this. I think more of a, hopefully not a forever long-term shelter. We're talking more of a temporary shelter while we're waiting on housing, right? And Dave has introduced us tonight to the kind of mixed income neighborhood housing where there's more infill, there's more just being able to place people from the streets into low-income housing and one or two at a time in single occupancy units or duplexes, where they just begin to fit in or blend in more, right, with that neighborhood. And then there's kids go to school with those kids, and they go to church with those people, and they go to work with those people. And so it's a more of a long-term, but it'd be nice, I'd love to see, to introduce you to Dave Hall and for you guys to talk about a short-term and a long-term way of you know, in stages of moving people off the streets into something that would be good more long-term. So anyway, this is David Hall. And did you want this?
Yes, if you don't like it. It won't be long, I promise.
Thank you.
My background, 37 years of being a Chicago firefighter. And I've found that our services are always overwhelmed in every city, and sometimes centralized, others that we're just scraping to get by every day. In Chicago, to see a firefighter retire is a hard thing. It's just a hard job. Down here, we're looking at, you have two of the busiest ambulances in the United States, the busiest ambulances. It's just a fact. and they're concentrated. They have one, which in whatever district it was, and they added a second, and they just now turned into the two busiest. There's a situation there, and there is a little bit of an answer that doesn't necessarily mean total social services. There's a lot of volunteers out here. I call them advocates. Every one of us want to advocate for each other. We don't have any kind of communication to do that. We're all on our own, doing it on our own, and we're not part of the larger systems that are built and don't have any access to it. But we are still a community. Again, working so many years on the street, I found that communicating with everybody lessened the needs of social services, which the majority of our calls that we're responding to, both on the fire department, the police department, the medical, it's a lot of social things that can be avoided if we actually have some communication. So with that being said, and I'm not going to go into the technical side of it, but using our technologies that we have today, social medias, and forming a group of people in all of Corpus Christi that are connected with resources from knowledge, connected with all of the different entities, so we can help them. And I constantly use the same scenario in every meeting that I talk in. A good friend of mine walks out of Walmart and somebody introduces themselves as a homeless person and they're in need. That person might not be able to help them at that moment, but there is technology, anything that's on anybody's phone, apps, that you can actually just call to other advocates, all of us, and we can say, yes, I'm in that area. You know, if somebody says that there's a bed free at the Salvation Army, how's that person going to get there? Well, with an app, and all the great advocates here that are doing this for free, mind you. This isn't hiring people, but just the community loving each other and having the ability to connect with the services. They can relay these messages and definitely cut down on the cost of the social services, which are actually our emergency services at the moment that are taking the brunt of this attack. When I say attack, I don't mean that in a negative way.
Sure,
It's a problem with the solution, and the solution comes from our hearts. With all the advocates we got out there, I think unifying all of them. And it isn't an expensive project to do. It truly would be an app that communicates with them. But the app is nothing. I'm not going to get into the technology of that. We're talking about advocates, people that love each other, trying to help each other. It's just something that our community should look into.
So it sounds like maybe technology that connects
Well, exactly.
at that level, okay. Separate from HMIS is what I'm understanding, okay.
It's also a fantastic data point for point of contact with anybody. If you use the data that's flowing through this, and it's city data at that point, consider this an open source situation. That contact with that person and the need for services turns into data. And we can use that data when we're talking about developing any programs that we have here. It's data that's falling outside of the conventional services that we have right now. And again, the ministries and can't I use the silo term? It's so much easier.
Sure, understand.
All the silos have their entities, and they have their way of communicating with each other. We don't. The advocates don't. And I know, and from a lot of experience of being on the street firsthand, that those are the tools that I've used to get through my career.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm understanding you correctly, it's some type of app that connects homeless individuals or advocates that would be managed by the city. Is that what I'm understanding?
Using technology. So an app, I don't want to be defined as it, or people want to call it AI, but you know, my foundation is AI development. so people want to call it AI. It doesn't have to be that technical because the apps, the technology really aren't a service. They're just a tool, just like a screwdriver. It's the individuals that are using it to a greater cause. Yes.
When you say
Thank you.
advocates, you're talking about citizen volunteers.
I'm talking about every one of these lovely people right here. and everybody they know, and it grows and it grows and it grows. All of us are advocates, every single one of us.
Okay, thank you so much. As we're gonna, I love the conversation. We can stick around a little to talk more about it, maybe speak to your ideas, and then we'll share some information in the end. You can email us. We're gonna go into our last grant here, Emergency Solutions Grant Basics. Just kind of give you a list of activities that are eligible. These come in components: street outreach, homeless prevention, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, HMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System, sort of kind of what you were talking about. It's at higher level. It's HUD required for anything that's funded through HUD and managed primarily by license, which comes with the cost. And then administrative activities. So that being said, does anybody have anything that we haven't already talked about that would fall under this realm in terms of addressing homelessness and in these areas? And I think we've hit pretty much all the highlights. Okay, moving on, we just, at the end of our presentation, wanted to make sure that we let you know we have one more community input session for District 5, and that's going to take place tomorrow at Dr. Clotilde P. Garcia Public Library, located at 5930 Brockhampton, from 6 to 7, same time. And then if we have any other questions or input on needs, and I wanted to share with you our contact information, more than welcome to continue those discussions, either offline or you can always send us an email. So with that, I think that's a wrap, unless there's any last thoughts.
Were we going to hear from Dan? No?
He's our note taker tonight. Yeah.
I'm so happy that the planning and community or neighborhood development have combined, and I hope I'm seeing nice smiles on your face and that you think it's good too. Good. I think you're going to accomplish a lot.
Thank you. And then I think we had one last comment in the back.
Yeah, I think I would just be remiss to say that Dan Suckley is not my representative, obviously, but I am disappointed to see that he's not here. He was here at the last round of input sessions, which was encouraging, but yeah, there were several council members who weren't actually a part of this, and I think that really speaks to the lack of urgency and care that many on the council have around this issue, which is really devastating, to be quite honest, because they have access to information and resources that we advocates simply do not. And if this is to be a partnership, I would think that the least that they could do is be here. But I did want to also say that it's been more than a year. There was the first council meeting of 2023 when Mayor Guajardo asked about an update of the phase 1 of the open entry shelter, that the city was going to pass $1 million of CARES Act money to the Salvation Army to. And it was at that meeting that she found out that Salvation Army said that that was not a viable solution. So we are still waiting on the city's plan for this low barrier shelter. I mean, Peter Zanoni, again, at a different budget session, so it wasn't for this HUD money specifically, but just like the general budget, said that Plan B was to find another nonprofit to pass the money to. So I'm really hoping that, you know, folks actually know where that $1 million is, but it is really terrible that we're just sitting on that amount of money when there are folks, you know, being subjected to sweeps by a CCPD, who are being subjected to harassment every day. My aunt, who is a teacher at one of the local public schools, just texted me a week ago asking for resources because she knew about two students who were living with their mother outside of Ray High School, and she didn't know where to go. She didn't know what to do, right? And so, I mean, that's the kind of emergency that we're dealing with. So I just felt like I would be remiss to say that we're still waiting and willing to work with the city on building this low barrier shelter, but we need access to information, and yeah, we're ready to get started.
Thank you so much. And if you want to stick around just so we can give you some resource information, it'd be great. Thank you everyone for coming. We appreciate it. You have a good night.